Good morning. Our project is solving a missing person's case by cracking their Android device. This project is presented by me, Arnav, and my colleague Bikash.
Mobile forensics is the process of extracting information from a mobile computer, that is, a mobile phone. There are many methods of extracting information from a device. However, the biggest challenge in mobile forensics is being able to extract the information without knowing the password to a device. In this project, we aim to use some of the skills we have learned in order to extract information from an Android device.
Mobile forensics is usually used by law enforcement. It is used in cases when a victim's mobile has been found and the information on that device may be useful in solving of a crime. There are many reasons why a mobile forensics team would be used and why mobile forensics is important. Mostly, it's because a lot of a person's life in modern times revolves around their mobile phones. Who they talk to, what messages they have received, what their social circle is, who they are interacting with. All of this information can easily be found on the phone. Before we talk further about why mobile forensics is important, it is important to discuss the ethics of mobile forensics. By virtue of being what it is, mobile forensics deals with being able to crack a person's device or gain access to it without their consent. Therefore, it can very easily be said that this could be used for malicious purposes by uh, ill-meaning people. However, since a lot of a person's life is on the phone and it could take a long time for law enforcement to get the correct subpoenas, the paperwork to be able to acquire all the information on the phone through the third party companies. It makes sense that mobile forensics be an important aspect of law enforcement and dealing with uh, the a victim's devices quickly. Finally, we should talk about why mobile forensics is a popular option. As mentioned earlier, a person's life revolves around their phone. Today, a lot of people are using applications that are unique because of the boom in technology. Lot of companies may not know. A lot of law enforcement or enforcement officers may not know what exact applications are being used by a victim. Therefore, it is good to be able to see through a phone to determine exactly where a person has spent most of their online activity and who they have interacted with the most. Another great uh, uh, advantage of mobile forensics is that there is a simple lack of security on it. When talking about mobiles, the biggest security concern becomes opening the mobile device through the password or PIN or cracking it in some way. But once the phone has been opened, there is very little, if any, security procedures or any security protocols beyond that. A person's email is unlocked on their phone, their call logs are very easily seen, everybody that they have messaged, all their social media accounts can all be easily viewed, which is why mobile forensics is important.
As mentioned before, there are many reasons for the study of mobile forensics. However, at the core of it, there are only a select few objects that a mobile forensics investigator has. Firstly, it is to bypass the lock screen of the device. Secondly, it is extracting as much information as possible. And the final step is narrowing down the information to things that will be useful to the law enforcement. For the purpose of this project, we'll only be discussing the first objective, that being bypassing the lock screen. Usually, the data is encrypted just once. However, multiple encryption may also be used. Therefore, it is important to determine how many times a device has been encrypted. The most popular is a single encryption. In this case, a device is encrypted when it is locked or turned off. However, there are cases where a double encryption method is used, where the device cannot be turned on unless a password is provided. There are three popular ways to lock a device, those being a PIN, a password, or a pattern. In the rest of this presentation, we'll be talking about how to bypass this lock screen. Specifically, we'll be talking about the PIN.
Before we talk about how to unlock an Android device, let us briefly discuss what the different locking mechanisms are. Firstly, we have a PIN. A PIN is a 4 to usually 6-digit numeric password. A password is an alphanumeric locking mechanism which can be any length long, up to 32 characters usually. And finally, we have a pattern. Looks like an image. An example of a pattern can be seen in our previous slide right over here. By making a pattern using these dots, a phone can be locked. This sort of lock is called a pattern. Now, as discussed earlier, we'll be talking about bypassing a pin. As the pin is the simplest method or the simplest locking mechanism to bypass, being able to bypass all other methods is going to be more complicated. Therefore, let's talk about the different methods that are available to us. The first being the brute force. In the brute force method, we try every password slowly. So, assuming that it is a 4-digit pin, we would begin with 0000, 0001, so on and so forth until we have cracked the pin. A variation of brute force is a dictionary attack. A dictionary attack looks at the most common pins that are used and uses those to try and bypass the lock screen. Other potential methods include factory resetting the device or using an exploit. We'll be further talking about these methods in the next slides.
Brute force may not be the most obvious method we can use for cracking the pin on a device. Brute forcing is a method of simply tracing all possible combinations until one of them works. This may be surefire way of getting the device unlocked, but has some major limitations. The first being timeouts. There are standard timeouts which are implemented by device manufacturers to prevent actors from gaining access to a device. Therefore, using all passports may not be a good idea. Therefore, a dictionary attack is more popular. In a dictionary attack, the most popular passports are stored in a word list. The word list may be different depending upon the region of the world, and having a good word list may be deciding factor of whether a device can be unlocked or not. On an average, 4 digit pin takes 7 days to crack, and 8 digit pins take 190 years to crack, which makes longer pins impossible to crack. Most manufacturers also automatically factory reset a device after a certain number of tries for the pin. This number usually 15, meaning that after 15 incorrect tries, the device would be reset and the data would be lost.
As mentioned before, sometimes a device would be simply factory reset. This may be intentional on the part of a forensic investigator, or it may be due to a manufacturer's rules. Because if when a device has been factory reset, it deletes all data from the point it was sent out by the factory, meaning any data that was stored onto the device is usually deleted. However, there are now third party apps such as DroidKit, which allow users to retrieve data from mobile devices which have already been factory reset. The biggest risks here are that not all data can be recovered. there will definitely be data which is completely lost, and so an important information may not be available. However, given that the process of factory resetting completely removes the password or PIN from a device, it may be a worthwhile effort if the brute forcing method is unsuccessful.
Exploits are used when a known CVE is available for a particular version of Android. However, since this may not always be the case, a second more important limitation may be that the information is unreliable and the exploit may end up damaging the data. Therefore, this method should only be used as a last resort.
In our case study, a person was found with their device. This device was cracked and had a PIN that prevented the law enforcement from gaining access to this device. A forensic investigator was put in place in order to crack the PIN to this device. We needed to crack the PIN to find the parties responsible for the victim. When the brute forcing method was used, we used a list of the most popular pins, which is known to be able to decrypt or unlock around 26% of devices. However, since this method did not work, we had to use a different method to bypass the lock screen. We used ADB to do it. This phone was rooted, it had its OEM unlocked and USB debugging enabled. When we logged into the device using ADB, we noticed that we had root access to the device already. We navigated onto the system folder and deleted the gesture.key file, the lock settings.database files, and the passwords.key files. After all of these files were deleted, we were able to access the device using any pin at all. The reason we were able to delete these files was because we had root access to the device. This is one of the biggest reasons why rooting a device may not always be a good idea. After the device was unlocked, we were able to look at the messages and the contacts of the victim. The law enforcement was able to narrow down its list of suspects, and responsible parties were finally found.
In conclusion, it is highly recommended that users do not root their Android devices to prevent this vulnerability. And we also suggest that longer and less common pins should be used to secure the mobile device. Thank you so much for listening our presentation.